Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. On this episode, I'm really excited to welcome our guest, Charles Floate. Now, Charles is an SEO consultant, SaaS founder, really has a lot going on. I don't know if I can name all of them here, and then one of my go-to experts for all things SEO. So, Charles, I really appreciate you joining the show.
I appreciate you having me, Ryan, and I appreciate everybody at home tuning in.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So for those of you who haven't heard of Charles Floate, because some of the listeners aren't really into SEO as much as we are, let's just do a quick intro on who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Charles. I've been an SEO for about 15 years now. I'm British, obviously, but I'm based in Thailand, in Koh Samui at the moment on a little Thai island. I mostly do SEO consulting by day and then kind of run my SaaS and CPA portfolio and social media kind of brand for my SEO business as well by night. In general, I've been trying to move in the last couple of weeks or months or so more towards SaaS and more acquisition-based and acqui-hire kind of based SaaS stuff, and specifically trying to get AI-based SaaS in AI-powered SaaSes in the SEO space as well. But in general, I just kind of live, breathe, and eat SEO, right?
Yeah, I enjoy following you. Connor Schaller was actually the one who kind of turned me onto your account. So I'm like, who the hell is this Charles Floate guy? And I've just like been hooked ever since because like you tell the truth, you know. Not a lot of marketers like to tell the truth.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Connor's a good guy as well, so shout out to Connor as well.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about your journey with SEO. I saw one of your recent posts a few weeks ago where you talked about your career path from like age 12 to 28. You had a couple of run-ins with like the feds or something in there that made me laugh. So what was it about SEO that kind of had you hooked?
Yeah, so I was always pretty entrepreneurial, right, when I was in high school and stuff, and I knew that I wasn't going to succeed academically, and I just really hated high school. And I wanted to do something online, and I realized that the world was just shifting away from, like the yellow pages that my grandma was using to do all of her, like, business deals and things with whenever she needed to phone anybody. And everybody had started shifting towards Google, right? If you needed a plumber, if you needed a lawyer, if you needed to buy a hat online, whatever, everybody was moving towards Google. And I really saw that as an opportunity when I was like 12, 13 years old, and I thought, why am I listening to these teachers who are, making like $30,000, $35,000 a year, when I can look at these people online who are making that in, a handful of weeks, running these crazy high-end like affiliate campaigns and stuff like that, right? And I'm sure like half of what I was watching at the time was probably just complete scams, but it really was kind of inspirational to somebody who was so young, and it led me down the right path in the end, right?
Yeah, that's great. So what do you say is like one of your biggest SEO achievements and wins so far? I know you've got quite a few, but if you had to pick like one or two, what would those be?
Yeah, for sure. So I've ranked for, dozens and dozens of super high competition keywords and stuff across the time. But when I was very young, I ranked for like number 2 for Moz and Rand Fishkin and like a load of other keywords and stuff in a case study for Matthew Woodward's blog, as like a bit of a joke, because Rand had said that the Penguin algorithm had basically like killed link spam. So I ranked for his name with link spam, right? And achieved like number 2 for basically all of those keywords. It was outranking like Wikipedia and things. This was, I think 14 years ago or something at this point. And I ended up trying to give it as a case study to Moz, but they rejected it because they didn't particularly enjoy what I was, talking about and things and stuff. And so I ended up guest posting as the first person on Matthew Woodward's blog. And that's what really actually kind of introduced me to the bigger world stuff, because he was already quite famous at the time, was already, speaking on stage at big conferences and very well known across all these, digital forums and stuff, which was really the olden days and the olden glory days were all based on like these underground forums and stuff, really.
Are you talking about Black Hat World? When did you first get on that one?
I got on Black Hat World years ago, but I was on like loads of different ones. So mostly I was on like Black Hat Underground, which was a crazy awesome one, and then there was loads of other ones like Wicked Fire and stuff, which was, I think Wicked Fire was the one that really opened my eyes, and specifically C. Carter, who's still active nowadays and things, and is a massive US-based marketer in and of himself, who doesn't actually reveal his identity, which I think is really cool. He used to do these, absolutely insanely high-level posts. I'm talking about PBNs and things and stuff that, we all know nowadays, but this was, 15 years ago and stuff, and this stuff was absolute gold at the time. And there was just various things around like how to market your affiliate offers and how to do link building and how to approach SEO and how Google was moving into specific directions. And I really think without that early kind of leg up from those days and those specific kind of people, I don't think I'd be in the position I'm now.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So let's talk about the current state of SEO. Obviously, there's a lot of shifting parts going on right now. What is your perspective on all this? I guess, what are some important things to follow while cutting out all the noise from, everyone at Google, the Search Central team, they're throwing lies everywhere. We got the big white hat influencers throwing lies everywhere. Where would you say is like a good place to focus on with everything shifting?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of mixed messaging going on, right? Which is the problem. And the issue I always come back to is that people's opinions, if they've been developed over the course of like a decade or decades, like at this point, some people have been in SEO for 20, 25 years, those opinions are very, very hard to change, even if you're showing them evidence directly in their face, right? Like they don't want to change it. It's a belief system at this point, right? And people are naturally and instinctively protective of those belief systems. So sometimes even the correct people to follow still believe stuff that is not correct nowadays because they're not open to change, right? And in SEO, you just have to be. You have to adapt so rapidly because the goalposts shift very rapidly and things do shift. The core fundamentals stay the same, but the way you have to approach them and the way you have to be, developing your campaigns and stuff, they rapidly change overnight with these algorithm updates and stuff. And as people have seen, recently with things like helpful content and stuff, where even the most white hat of, niche blogs and expert blogs and stuff have been absolutely wrecked, in the course of a couple of weeks or so. And that has only, again, been perpetuated again by even more recent updates. So everyone was like, oh, I'm going to recover from the March update. And now actually it's just like double down and destroy their traffic even more, right? So I think, and also if you come back to, like you said, the Google engineers and the Google messaging and even Search Liaison, I think admitted on Twitter 2 or 3 days ago, basically saying that he doesn't actually know 100% what's going on. It's like, because the engineers don't tell him what's going on, right? So he just has his own interpretations and things, and that's what he's trying to tell you. Well, that's not great. And I don't really know of any other company ever that has like a public liaison that has to communicate personal feelings and opinion rather than some sort of actually, fact from a company that has got their engineering team giving them honest and open and conversations, right? And I think that that's a very bad point from Google. And I feel sorry for some of the people who have listened to Google and listened to these engineers and taken it very seriously and still got wrecked anyway. But unfortunately, I think that in terms of just where you have to go to listen, there's a load of really good people like Julian Goldie on YouTube who's active every single day. He's posting on YouTube like
I love his clickbait thumbnails too.
Yeah, exactly. And dude, that's like a perfect example of what you should be doing for your own marketing stuff, right? Even if you're not doing SEO videos, you should be doing the same style of like clickbait thumbnails for your own niches and stuff, right? Because it works. This is the point, right? These marketers, not even just inside of SEO, they're showing you stuff that works outside of SEO and works in day-to-day marketing. And you should be looking at how they're doing their copywriting, how they're doing their thumbnails, how they're doing their buttons, how they're doing their CRO and their text and the colors and stuff, right? Because that's all education in and of itself. And a lot of people don't pay enough attention to be kind of learning at that level of detail, right?
Yeah, there was I think it was a video of you and Julian Goldie, and you talked about how Google was like specifically targeting you and Julian for like posting all these like parasite SEO tactics or whatever. Talk about that a little bit, how you guys were like personally targeted.
Yeah, so I was personally targeted actually twice over the course of, I think it was about 4 or 5 years separately. And I was first targeted in 2013. And I had and the thing was, it wasn't any of my actual black hat stuff, right? Like none of my parasite pages, none of my like PBNs, none of my stuff that I was actually doing black hat on, that stuff was all fine, right? It was my SEO community stuff. So my SEO blog, which I'd only written myself to, a very high degree of case studies. Some of my blog posts were 20,000 words on that site, right? And I got hit with a pure spam penalty, which basically means that your site has zero value, that it's complete spam and that it's like gibberish and things like that, right? If I'm handwriting SEO tutorials, then it's not pure spam, right? That's obviously a bit more personal. And on the
we let Forbes and Reddit dominate page one of bullshit,
Yeah, exactly. And there's also the argument to be said that journalists at Forbes aren't experts to the degree that people who have actually spent their entire lives dedicated to a subject are actual experts, right? And you're replacing those people's hard work in their blogs with these, large media corporations that have got essentially the same templated messaging across all of these pages, and it's the same products showing up and up and again because it's just the highest commissions, right? It's not actually rating which one's the best, which again these experts are doing, and Google are arguing that it's helpful content when I'm like, well, it's the opposite, really. Do you know what I mean? But I do really think that in general, you just have to look at the SERPs, right? Like if you need to pay attention to anything, you should just be paying attention to what's going on in the SERPs and what's going on in your SERPs, right? If suddenly overnight the top 10 pages were all blog posts of, the top 10 best whatever, and now it's like Reddit's number one and Amazon's number two and New York Times number three, well then the entire intent of that SERP has shifted. And you need to probably shift the way you're approaching it to rank now. And a lot of people don't seem to be able to get out of that mindset. But I just try to go back to that whole thing where you just have to be able to adapt, right? And you adapt or you die. And I really do think that that's going to kind of be perpetuated with AI. Because I think that AI is just going to rapidly change industries overnight. The technologies are going to catch up, especially with the hardware now kind of catching up. Data centers are starting to put in a lot more of these A100 chips, and they are some scary ass chips when you look at some of the processing capabilities and stuff. Once we start to get more and more access to this wider kind of broader hardware, the software is just going to be giga-ran at that stage. And I really do think it's going to come for a lot of people's bread. And I think that people need to be really paying attention to that, and SEO has just been a great example of that shift over the last few years. And I think that Google's also a fairly good reflection of the real world at times, I like to think, where it's that kind of corporate monopolization of power just pushing into one where we are just seeing like a handful of companies controlling the SERPs. And that also feels like the stock market has gone to the same thing where it's the big seven, right? It's just the same thing in the SERPs where it's going to be these like big handful of publishers that control all the 80, 90% of the information and stuff, right? Which again is
it almost feels like a giant rug pull, bro, to be honest with you.
100%. And like to some extent, you can't blame Google because all they're doing is trying to profiteer for their shareholders. And that is what every corporation should do, right? But they also should be trying to somewhat go to their original core messaging, which is delivering quality results for their users. And I do think that they're underestimating the amount of people who will leave that search engine. And I do think they're underestimating the next generation, which aren't using Google. Like everybody, I have 9 brothers and sisters, right? I'm the oldest in my family. And all my younger brothers and sisters who are under 20, none of them use Google. They use YouTube, to be fair, but most of them are on TikTok. Most of them are smashing 3-4 hours a day on TikTok, and that will be probably the case coming forward. And it's going to be that short form video content. And even if it's not, it's going to be some short form like AI summarization, or it's going to be something like that. And search will change and it will shift. And at the moment, Google's not really shifting in the direction of that momentum, unfortunately.
So let's talk about the future of SEO quick. I'm glad you brought that up. Where do you see this going in the next 3, 5, 10 years? Do you think Google will still be on top in 10 years? Do you think a DuckDuckGo or a Bing or like a Perplexity or another LLM will come out of the woodwork? Like, where do you see this all going?
Yeah, so I don't think that in terms of the core search product, right? In terms of the way that we think about search, I think that Google will still be dominant in that arena. But I think the market will shift more away from that specific type of product, right? And I do think that they will lose market share to other places. And it might just be the case that it's multiple platforms taking it away. It's not just one platform taking it away, right? It's going to be Amazon search and TikTok search and YouTube search and eBay search and Etsy search and Pinterest search and all of these kind of other platforms that are just slowly going to chip and chip and chip away. And especially its specific niches, right? Like we already see it with things like makeup. TikTok and YouTube just dominate makeup now. And Google Trends, the amount of stuff that's just fallen for makeup, right, is just crazy. I think that they're, something like 5,000% less searches now than 10 years ago for that specific niche. And I think that will, again, just continue to show across multiple different niches and industries. And I do think that the way people are going to search is going to shift. But the problem with predicting 5 and 10 years is that the technology that we're dealing with now is rapidly changing in 1 year or 2 years or something, right? Even when we saw the release from Sora, right? Everyone was still thinking about like video AI as like Will Smith eating spaghetti with it like going all over the place and stuff, right? And then immediately we're like, oh, just gobsmacked. And I really, really do think that will continue to be the case with so many different technologies and so many different industries. And that's where I think with SEO, it's hard to predict where it will go. But I think that in general, you just have to shift with your market, right? So go to where your audience is going. If they're staying with Google, stay with Google. If they're shifting to YouTube, shift to YouTube. If they're shifting to Amazon, shift to Amazon, right? And ideally, you're all over the place anyway, and you're diversified, and you have got as many different streams as possible, so that specific algorithm changes or company changes or that can't actually affect you in the grand scheme of things, because you can just move capital, or you can move resources, or you can move market to these other platforms very quickly.
Yeah, I had Larry Ludwig on the show a couple months ago. I don't know if you've heard that name before.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty good SEO, sold a blog for millions, but he had something to say about like the whole SEO is dead argument. And he had a blog post that said SEO is dead, and it was a clickbait title. It said ... for informational sites. And I completely agree with them that all these random informational sites are going to be sucked up by AI overviews or whatever Google calls it eventually, LLMs, like wherever that traffic is shifting to for searching. Like, what do you think about that? Like the informational queries, is that even worth anyone's time and resources anymore to divert to written content for informational? I guess talk about that.
Yeah, so there's some resources to be had for informational content. In general, it's more so for supporting your money content, right? Like, so it's less so you're going to get clicks and you're going to generate sales and you're going to do internal links and stuff and you're going to get all this additional signals. It's more so that it's a piece of your topical bubble, so that Google recognizes you as an authority and an expert in your specific niche, and that you can rank for basically any keyword that you want to rank in that niche, because you've got so many other pages that are already ranking for it, right? But I do think that, unfortunately, yes, like a lot of publishers, and I think they're already dealing with it, right? Like there's so many travel bloggers specifically that have gotten completely smashed. There's so many small publishers. There's so many like local newspapers and stuff that have just gotten completely wrecked and things like that. And I do think that that's because they've lost a large amount of their search share, and they were so reliant on that search share. But at the same time, all these people are saying, oh, well, we're not SEOs and stuff. And I'm like, well, if your business is 100% reliant on SEO and on search traffic, then at some point you have to admit that you need to be an SEO, because otherwise you don't have a business that is in capable and safe hands, because you don't understand the main source of traffic and revenue for your business.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So I know there's a lot of like tactics and strategies that you could share. We could be here all day, all night for you. So what would you say like to someone who wants to future-proof their SEO strategy? Is it building high DR authoritative links? Like what would you say would be that number one thing right now for someone to future-proof their SEO?
Yeah, obviously, if you can be a DR90, be a DR90, right? Like that's just the number one way to get there, is be the most authoritative site in your niche, and you generally are untouchable.
So EEAT, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, just link authority, right? Just pure link authority. So just try and get to be the highest domain authority website in your niche. And it doesn't necessarily matter if you have like all the authors and stuff in the world. It's just that if you've got the best link profile, you will generally outrank anybody page for page. There's a very good chart by Ahrefs where if you look at the average page ranking from number 1 to number 10 in the SERPs, the only correlating factor is referring domains. Right, and that's the only correlating factor between which page is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and that does like play out in real world, where authority just wins on everything, and that's because in probably the last 20 to 30 Google core and major Google algorithm updates that Google has released over 5 to 10 years, every single one of them has boosted authority signals. And that is also as a direct result why these large websites and these generally like media groups and things are winning, because they own 50 different gigantic authority websites that they can just interconnect. And suddenly these 50 different websites are now all even more authoritative than they were before, because they're all just boosting each other up, right? So it becomes this kind of just a race to the top of who can have the most authority. and then you control the search basically. And
I
this
used to work at one of those conglomerates. Dotdash Meredith was my first job out of school, and then I used to compete against Red Ventures. So like that was like opened my eyes. I was like, holy shit, there's like 6 companies that control the internet.
Yeah, literally. Dotdash Meredith is a prime example, right? Like I've actually also done work with them as well because they did a lot of the dot news stuff and things, which was pretty interesting. And they used to cover like Google and SEO and stuff back in the day and things, which is actually pretty interesting. But in terms of the way that Google is moving towards and how you can future-proof yourself, I think the only way you can do it is through authority. But other techniques that you can use is parasite SEO, because you can essentially build pages on authoritative domains, and things like AI summarization and SGE and stuff like that, they're using summarizations of these very high authoritative pages. So you can't really get a summarization bot or a summarization AI like Google's SGE to output what you want it to output with one website. You need to have 10, 15 different pages that you can control in the SERP so that Google builds a consensus from those 10, 50 pages, which is all the same amount of content that you've created, right? And then it outputs and spits out that consensus for you. And we've found dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of like hackers and malware infected people controlling SGE output to like try and scam and infect users and things and stuff, right? And there doesn't seem to be any real safety protocols. I do know that there was, to be fair, a recent update to SGE that did roll out, I think like 2 days ago or something, and it has seemingly gotten better at sourcing, so like which sites it's choosing to pick from. But there doesn't seem to be any specific safety protocols or precautions to stop people from recommending like spam or malware or scam links, basically, which is going to be a serious problem.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny because Google's like, oh, we're anti-parasite SEO, but then they sign a 60 million annualized contract with Reddit. I'm like, that's the definition of parasite SEO. So there's no way it's going anywhere, you know?
No, yeah. There's so many examples of like Reddit comments where it's like somebody just asking a very generic question, and it's like the first one is like, I like this casino. It's just like there's links to some like random casino site or something, and that's just parasite SEO and a prime example.
That's a good SEO. Whoever's behind that.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, there's been some really good examples of not even necessarily SEOs, but just affiliates and bloggers that, because they got hit by HCU and things, they shifted to like parasite SEO or Reddit and things like that and started making some serious money. I know that if you go to YouTube and you search for Jason the Affiliate School and just put in Reddit after your search, he has a couple videos where he managed to get to like $25,000 a month in earnings. And he's just a standard blogger and affiliate from the UK, purely off of Reddit and Reddit comments and things and stuff. And it was crazy at how quickly he'd been able to do it. And he was just buying like AIDS Reddit accounts and things and doing proxies and stuff. But it was really, really interesting to see the kind of creativity that people had as a reply to Google, kind of just favoring Reddit as a massive deal under the table kind of thing. Because 60 million seems like a fairly cheap deal for the amount of data that Reddit has. Right?
Oh, for sure. I don't know how comfortable you are. Do you mind sharing like quickly like your SEO tool stack or AI tool stack that you use?
Yeah, so SEO tool stack, I have so many tools, right? So Ahrefs and SEMrush we pay for. And then obviously we use like a lot of sheets and things, a lot of automations we have like Mozbar, Ahrefs bar. I can check my Chrome extensions right now.
It's all good. I was just curious. Do you Surfer, like those on-page optimizers?
We have Cuppa, right? So Cuppa does it for you now. So we've actually built that. Yeah, we built that into Cuppa. So if you're a Cuppa Power Editor, you get access to the Power Editor. Sorry, you're a Power user, you get access to the Power Editor. So it actually allows you to have all of the same features that Surfer has basically built in, and we try to even make it a little bit better. I also use keywords everywhere, Spark SEO, Axiom, Harper AI, and detailed SEO, vidIQ for YouTube, and then there's a really good extension for Chrome called View Rendered Source as well, which I use. And then every single Chrome browser that I use, I pause the account sharing and any diagnostic sharing to Google. So nothing is sent back to Google.
Yeah. No, I love that. Let's talk about Cuppa now. You just mentioned Cuppa. For those who are listening, I've probably never heard of this. Like, what the hell is Cuppa, you know? So talk about Cuppa, which for those listening is an AI SaaS tool. I believe you didn't develop it, but you own it. Talk about that a little bit and what differentiates Cuppa from the hundreds of AI SaaS tools out there that are essentially white label open AIs, I like to call them.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I didn't start Cuppa, as you just said. Another British developer did, who's also kind of in SEO. He's a programmatic SEO, basically, called Ian Nuttall, super clever guy. Chris Riley bought it off of him. And then I bought my shares from Chris, right? So Chris and I own it basically 50-50. We have another two business partners that own a little share between them. And then we just develop it internally. What we changed Cuppa from is we didn't just want it to be an SEO article output tool, right? We wanted it to be a content suite. So it does articles, it does newsletters, it does social posts and scheduling for you. It does local pages. It does. It will soon be doing news integration as well. So we'll be able to live scrape Google News and then just essentially like spin articles into just reacting immediately to live ongoing situations and things, which will be awesome for news agencies out there and potentially people who are looking to automatically add a news area onto their site. For any niche, basically. And then we've also been trying to add in loads of other features. So we have a programmatic SEO tool. We have the bulk generation tool. You can generate images with like Midjourney and DALL-E 3 inside of the editor without having to have an API key. There's all sorts of optimization features around like internal linking and bolding and like formatting and tables and schema and microdata that we do automatically for you. And then we can also automatically upload it to basically any CMS. And we are loaded fully with Zapier. So if you already use Zapier, we can just plug and play with Zapier and their marketplace, and it makes it super easy to load it into basically any tool.
I love that. So it's like an all-in-one, essentially, AI/SEO SaaS tool.
Exactly. We were trying to basically be like 5 of the biggest SEO tools in content in one tool, basically, and also be cheaper than all of them as well. So the main thing that also sets us apart from some of the other rights as well is that, again, you just said it, they're kind of just OpenAI plugged on top, but they charge credits, right? So you end up paying like 5 to 10 times more than the API cost that you could just pay yourself. So we just let you plug in your API key from OpenAI and you can generate as much content as you want. But that then allows you to not have any additional costs and credits and stuff. And a lot of the competitors that we're dealing with, you pay for monthly credits and those credits don't roll over. So if you don't use that 5 to 10 times more expensive per word than using, ChatGPT or OpenAI API, right, then you have just put money in your fireplace and burned it, right? So there's this massive waste that's ongoing with these kind of other competitors, and I am completely against it. I think it should just be you put in your own API keys, and you know that it's going to cost you, 10 cents per 1,000 words or something very, very cheap for GPT 4.0, and you can just scale that up as much as you want.
Yeah, there's so many gimmicks in the AI SaaS world, bro. It's like all these people are fooled by these nice looking websites and all they're doing is like pre-configuring these prompts to make it look fancy and then you just plug it in. I'm like, just buy fucking ChatGPT Plus for $20 a month and then just do that. You're just wasting your money on that. So it's just funny how people think. So in addition to Cuppa AI, Charles, are there any other AI tools that you're using? Are you a ChatGPT Plus, Claude? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I have access to all of them, right? So I pay for ChatGPT Plus, Claude AI. I've got Llama on my desktop at the moment for just random stuff that I use on my desktop.
A little bit uncensored LLM, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's perfect for desktop stuff, right? Because the main issue you have with I also pay for Gemini, by the way, as well. The main issue you have with stuff like Gemini is if you're talking anything about SEO, is it just defaults to the most white of white hat SEO basically, and it just hates anything that you're trying to talk about, like link building or buying links or anything like that, which is obviously a lot of the work that we're doing is exactly that stuff. And we just try to find a model that would react as well as possible to what we're trying to talk to it about. And Llama's been great, to be honest. It's been fantastic, and I would highly recommend anybody get an installation, put it onto your desktop, and just run some stuff. If you don't know what pip is, learn how to use pip and stuff, right? And it's fantastic. It will change your perspective of what you think AI is capable of if you actually give it a go.
Yeah, no, that's some good advice. So one thing I'm curious, Charles, is what motivates you to just continue learning SEO? You've quote unquote made it. Why don't you just go chill on the beach and sip some cocktails in Thailand? What keeps you going in the world of SEO and sharing all this knowledge that you continually find?
Yeah, I like doing SEO stuff, right? So I don't know. A lot of people say like they don't enjoy SEO, and I don't blame them. But I'm very competitive in nature, and SEO in terms of business is one of my favorite things to do. And I always it feels like a constant challenge. Like there's always things changing, there's always things moving. You constantly have to be doing things, and it feels like a never-ending game, and it feels again, it just feels like one big game if you play, which is better than actually having to be running a business or doing something. Right? It's just an easier thing to be putting your mind to. I also have just built this network of people right around me, and it's good to be constantly reinforcing your daily activities when you've got people who are just talking to you all the time, and they're constantly sharing interesting stuff with me. Right? I don't necessarily share that much stuff with people anymore, but because I've shared so much over my years and things, I've just got people constantly like DMing me and sending me WhatsApp messages and things like that, and Slack notifications and all sorts of things about interesting stuff that's happening. So I'm constantly waking up in the morning with like, oh yeah, that's changed, and oh yeah, this is happening and things. So there's just motivation in and of itself. And I do think to some extent I've made it probably now, right? But I do think like AI and stuff is going to change kind of the world. So I'd rather have a bigger safety net and a bigger kind of egg to sit on, right, than what I currently have. And I think that I'm not even 30 yet, so I think that there's still probably some room in me until I retire. But I have been thinking about doing that next year, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, that's where all the good marketers live now. Is East Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, bro. I'm sure the UK pound, but the American dollar is king over there. So you can live like a king on for a lot less over in East Asia. And I'm sure that's why a lot of people go there.
Yeah, 100%. So like, I think my rent's like $1,500 a month, and I have a three-story villa with a swimming pool and like a garden and stuff. Right? Like, it's like I could spend more, but it's the actual space size that I would be in would just be kind of ridiculous at that point, right? So, and then
Yeah.
there's some point where it's just I like living by like a stoic philosophy of you don't need to have too much and you don't need to be over consuming and things like that and stuff. So
Yeah. Is that Ryan Holiday?
yeah, Ryan Holiday is a massive
Yeah.
influence on me, right? So I about 8 years ago I paid for his consulting. He was like $5,000 an hour or something for his consulting, and it was at the time it was a gigantic expense, right? But I was like, do you know what, screw it, I'll pay it because I read Trust Me I'm Lying, then I read Growth Marketing Hacks or Growth Hack Marketing, and then I read a couple other of his books as well, and they really changed my perspective on SEO and on business and on life, and so that was probably the best $5,000 I've ever spent, to be honest.
Wow. No, that's really cool. So one last question here. I know you got short on time, but define a marketing quack in SEO. This is the Marketing Quacks podcast after all, Charles. So there's a million tricks and gimmicks out there in the world of SEO. What would you say is kind of that number one that makes your blood boil?
Let my blood boil. Oh, okay. Geez. Calling stuff hacks when it's not a hack, right? Like that's the most annoying thing ever. I'm like, you didn't hack anything. Like
It's a
you
clickbait title, bro. It's for
yeah,
CTR.
the worst offenders are like the people who call it a hack and they just use a tool for the exact purpose it was meant to be used for. I'm like, what is going on? Like, and it really kind of offends me as someone who is personally somewhat involved, as you said earlier, a little bit in that world. It's definitely not a hack, and that definitely offends me. But there's stuff that I've probably that's wound me up that I've actually ended up using in my own marketing and stuff, like Ty Lopez at the start, right, when he was doing all those big in my garage videos and stuff on YouTube and things, that used to wind me up like no tomorrow. But I ended up learning quite a lot from his marketing kind of gimmicks and stuff, right, and things. So I took a bit away from it, even though I think he might be going like bankrupt now or something. But it's pretty crazy. He's getting like sued by his own investors and things. But I don't know what's going on
That's
there.
funny.
Yeah, I could see something like that happening in the end, but it was he had some really interesting marketing plays, and and he was probably one of the first people to really heavily use clickbait on YouTube, and I think that was very interesting, and I'm always interested in any consumer psychology stuff, and it's interesting that a lot of these quacks work, right, despite them being
Yeah, yeah.
just like gimmicky and weird and stuff in the first place.
I saw you post recently about how the big SEO influencers like the Lily Rays of the world are now like screenshotting you and Julian Goldie and saying like, report these people, don't follow them. Like,
Yeah.
what's the deal with that now?
Yeah, so like to be fair, I don't even know what in the end happened with that conference. There was two camps in that conference where they were accusing each other of like doing God knows what. But from what I can tell, Actually, to be fair, I know this happened because Google set up a form and then basically DM'd a load of influencers and stuff in SEO saying, hey, if there's any, sites you'd like to report, this is a direct line to us. We will have a look at this stuff, right? And so I think that a lot of people who are in that community, and from what we can tell, Lily was just the only one who went and put it on stage and told everybody about this, and that she'd been watching our videos and sending them to Google and stuff like that. Which, in all fairness, if she sees us as the competition, which I don't really understand because she's doing this work for free for a mega corporation and stuff, and we're not her competition if we're black hat and she's white hat and stuff like that, right? I think she sees us as like the enemy or something like that.
Well, what does she owe Google? I don't understand that. Like, what do these people think they owe Google?
No, yeah, I don't understand. I think that they get like invited to Google campus and they do like, these little engineering one-on-ones and stuff like that and things. And I think that that's where they build like this.
Another gimmick.
Well, yeah, I think that that's where they make it feel personal, right? And that's where it also like reinforces their beliefs the entire time. So I think it's slightly cultish, but I can't really say too much about that. But I will say that I have always been a massive advocate for not sharing the websites, right? I've always said to people, like, Google is looking at our tweets. Google is looking at our YouTube. Like, I got hit 11 years ago at this point, right? And they haven't changed their tune, right? They're the same company. If not, they've gotten worse, with this leadership changes and things like that. And they're actively looking to do this on a grander scale. And they did. Right, they ended up not just coming after like individual influencers like me and Julian. They ended up smashing like 20, 30 of the biggest influencers on YouTube and Twitter and stuff overnight, and then ended up doing like manual reporting and stuff on like 500,000 websites and stuff. I had one of the people that I'm very familiar with and very close with, who himself does like interviews and stuff in the SEO world. He sent me his email overnight, and it was just like manual report, and it was him scrolling for about 30, 40 seconds of manual reports on these websites, right? So it was absolutely insane. And the fact that Google admitted that they were manual actions and they were manual reports, and that it's not the algorithm that's cleaning up this stuff. And in some cases, it was just the entire search console got wiped out, right? It wasn't the fact that, they were all black hat sites. Some of the domains that I was being shown didn't even have a website on them. They just put the domain into search. They just registered the domain and put it in Search Console. They hadn't actually built anything yet, right? And they still got hit with a manual action, right? So it was obvious that Google were kind of coming after people for speaking a bit too loudly and showing off their websites. But I'd always said that don't reveal them, because I learned my lesson and very, very quickly kind of became a bit too paranoid and just started moving everything under different names and different computers and things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure the name Charles Floate, Julian Goldie are like Google's knowledge graph shit list right now as the censorship only continues. But Charles, I won't hold you any longer. This has been a fun conversation. Is there any final notes on just general SEO advice or anything that we talked about that you want to provide for listeners here at the end?
Yeah, so like I do a lot of consultations with people where the first question is, what should I be doing? And I'm always like, well, what are you good at? What have you had success in the past? Why are you so scared that thing that works then isn't working now? Like Google's algorithm hasn't changed so much to the extent that all techniques now don't work, right? And that everything is being hit, and that we're gone, and that SEO is dead and things like that. That's not the case at all. There is a lot of things that still work, that are still monetizable, that you can still grow into, and that you shouldn't discredit what you previously knew. Just try to adapt into what the SERPs are shifting into, right? That's the only thing you can ever do, is just try and move with the SERPs, basically. And that's all I try to do as well. And that's why I always say that specific algorithm updates or specific years or things like that are generally trending in specific directions. Like we saw last year, Parasite SEO just took over basically every SERP, to the point that Google had to have like multiple updates and like a manual like spam reputation abuse policy, that they were emailing like sites that they can't do this anymore, things, because the algorithm was favoring it so much that they had to take these like such drastic manual actions and stuff, right? And we've seen that throughout the years with other techniques and stuff, right? Like previous to that in 2022, when ChatGPT started rolling out and AI started really rolling out, and GPT 3.5 and stuff came out, I think in like March 2022 or something, maybe even earlier than that. We really saw just AI content take off, right? And that was like the big thing that took over the search, took over the marketing world. Google was scared, everybody was scared, right? And it just seemed like that was the big trend. And it does seem to be this big kind of trend-oriented industry in SEO, and that's what I've seen over 16 years in SEO. And if you can jump on those trends, you can make like life-changing sums in temporary situations.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I appreciate that. So where can people find you online?
Yeah, so I'm generally active the most on Twitter. So it's like at Charles_SEO, or X, as Elon is trying to force everybody to say. And then I have my Instagram, which I'm not too active on. I try to post on YouTube, just Charles Floate. And then I have charlesfloatetraining.com as well for all of my premium and free SEO training courses, ebooks, consultations, and everything else. And then charlesfloate.com for basically everything else.
Yeah, I'll leave links for both those, give you all the high authority backlinks on all the podcast platforms.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Charles, thank you so much. This has been fun. I really appreciate your time for hopping on this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. And thanks to everyone for listening to this episode. Be sure to tune in again next time.